Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhav Radha Madhav Radhe. Jaya Pancha-tattva, Jaya Pancha-tattva, Pancha-tattva, Jaya Pancha-tattva. Jaya Nrsimhadev, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Nrsimhadev, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj. Jaya Jagannatha, Jaya Jagannatha, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadra Devi. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Jai Om Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtottara Shri Srimad. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. His co-founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Brahma Matva Gaudiya Acharya Vrind ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrind ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Navadip Dham ki jai. जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय, गंगा माई की जय, यमुना माई की जय, तुलसी देवी की जय, भक्ति देवी की जय, सामवेद गौर भक्त वृंद की जय. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 7, title Scheduled Incarnations, text 47. śaśvat praśāntam abhayaṁ pratibodha-mātraṁ śuddhaṁ samaṁ sad-asataḥ paramatma-tattvam śabdo na yatra puru-kārakavān kriyā-artho māyā paraity abhimukhe ca vilajjamānā tadvai padaṁ bhagavataḥ paramasya puṁso brahmeti yat vidur ajasra-sukhaṁ vishokam śaśvat praśāntam abhayaṁ pratibodha-mātram śuddhaṁ samaṁ sad-asataḥ paramatma-tattvam śabdo na yatra puru-kārakavān kriyārtho māyā paraity abhimukhe ca vilajjamānā tadvai padaṁ bhagavataḥ paramasya puṁso brahmeti yat vidur ajasra-sukhaṁ vishokam śaśvat praśāntam abhayaṁ pratibodha-mātram śuddhaṁ samaṁ sad-asataḥ paramatma-tattvam śabdo na yatra puru-kārakavān kriyārtho māyā paraity abhimukhe ca vilajjamānā tadvai padaṁ bhagavataḥ paramasya puṁso brahmeti yat vidur ajasra-sukhaṁ vishokam Vaishnavis.
śuddhaṁ samaṁ sad-asataḥ paramatma-tattvam śabdo na yatra puru-kārakavān kriyā-artho māyā paraity abhimukhe vilajjamānā padaṁ bhagavataḥ paramasya puṁso brahmeti vidur ajasra-sukhaṁ śaśvat praśāntam abhayaṁ pratibodha-mātraṁ śuddhaṁ samaṁ sad-asataḥ paramatma-tattvam śabdo yatra puru-kārakavān kriyārtho māyā paraity abhimukhe vilajjamānā padaṁ bhagavataḥ paramasya puṁso brahmeti vidur ajasra-sukhaṁ
śaśvat, eternal. praśāntam, without disturbance. abhayaṁ, without fear. pratibodha-mātraṁ, a consciousness opposed to the material counterpart. śuddhaṁ, uncontaminated. samaṁ, without distinction. sat-asataḥ, of the cause and effect. paramatma-tattvam, the principle of primeval cause. śabda, speculative sound. na, not. yatra, where there is. puru-kārakavān, resulting in fruitive action. kriyā-arthaḥ, for the matter of sacrifice. māyā, illusion. paraity, flies away. abhimukhe, in front of. cha, also. vilajjamānā, being ashamed of. tat, that. why, is certainly. padaṁ, ultimate face. bhagavataḥ, of the Personality of Godhead. paramasya, of the Supreme. puṁso, of the person. brahma, the Absolute. iti, thus. yat, which. vidur, known as. ajasra, unlimited. sukhaṁ, happiness. vishokam, without grief. Translation, kindly repeat. What is realized as the absolute Brahman is full of unlimited bliss without grief. That is certainly the ultimate phase of the Supreme Enjoyer, the Personality of Godhead. He is eternally void of all disturbances and fearless. He is complete consciousness as opposed to matter, uncontaminated and without distinctions. He is the principal primeval cause of all causes and effects, in whom there is no sacrifice for fruitive activities, and in whom the illusory energy does not stand. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The Supreme Enjoyer, the Personality of Godhead, is the Supreme Brahman or the Samam Bonam because of his being the supreme cause of all causes. The conception of impersonal Brahman realization is the first step due to his distinction from the illusory conception of material existence. In other words, impersonal Brahman is a feature of the absolute distinct. In other words, impersonal Brahman is a feature of the absolute distinct from the material variegatedness, just as light is a conception distinct from its counterpart, darkness. But the light has its variegatedness, which is seen by those who further advance in the light. And thus, the ultimate realization of Brahman is the source of the Brahman light, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Samam Bonam, or the ultimate source of everything. Therefore, meeting the Supreme Personality of Godhead includes the realization of the impersonal Brahman as realized at first in contrast with material inebriety. The Personality of Godhead is the third step of Brahman realization. As explained in the first canto, one must understand all three features of the Absolute, Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagavan. Pratibodha-mātraṁ is just the opposite conception of material existence. In matter, there are material miseries, and thus, in the first realization of Brahman, there is the negation of such material inebrities, and there is a feeling of eternal existence distinct from the pangs of birth, death, disease, and old age. That is the primary conception of impersonal Brahman. The Supreme Lord is the Supreme Soul of everything, and therefore, in the Supreme Conception, affection is realized. The conception of affection is due to the relationship of soul to soul. A father is affectionate to his son because there is some relationship of nearness between the son and the father. But that sort of affection in the material world is full of inebriety. When the Personality of Godhead is met, the fullness of affection becomes manifested because of the reality of the affectionate relationship. He is not the object of affection by material tinges of body and mind, but he is the full, naked, uncontaminated object of affection for all living entities, because he is the super soul or paramatma within everyone's heart. In the liberated state of affairs, the full-fleshed affection of the Lord is awakened. As such, there is an unlimited flow of everlasting happiness without the fear of its being broken, as we have experienced here in the material world. The relationship with the Lord is never broken. Thus, there is no grief and no fear. Such happiness is inexplicable by words, and there can be no attempt to generate such happiness by fruitive activities, by arrangements and sacrifices. But we must also know that happiness, unbroken happiness, exchanged with the Supreme Person, the personality of Godhead, as described in this verse, transcends the impersonal conception of the Upanishads. In the Upanishads, the description is more or less negation of the material conception of things. But this is not denial of the transcendental sense of the Supreme Lord. Herein also the same is affirmed in the statements about the material elements. They are all Herein also the same is affirmed in the statements about the material elements. They are all transcendental, free from contamination and material identification. And also the liberated souls are not devoid of senses. Otherwise, there cannot be any reciprocation of unhampered spiritual happiness exchanged between them in spontaneous, unbroken joy. All the senses, both of the Lord and of the devotees, are without material contamination. They are so because they are beyond the material cause and effects, as clearly mentioned herein. Sad-asataḥ param. The illusory material energy cannot work here, being ashamed before the Lord and his transcendental devotees. In the material world, the sense activities are not without grief. But here it is clearly said that the senses of the Lord and the devotees are without any grief. There is a distinct difference between material and spiritual senses, and one should understand it without denying the spiritual senses because of material conception. The senses in the material world are surcharged with material ignorance. In every way, the authorities have recommended purification of the senses from the material conception. In the material world, the senses are manipulated for individual and personal satisfaction, whereas in the spiritual world, the senses are properly used for the purpose for which they are originally meant, namely the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. Such sensual activities are natural, and therefore sense gratification there is uninterrupted and unbroken by material contamination, because the senses are spiritually purified. And such satisfaction of the senses is equally shared by the transcendental reciprocators. Since the activities are unlimited and constantly increasing, there is no scope for material attempts or artificial arrangements. Such happiness of transcendental quality is called Brahma-saukhyam, which will be clearly described in the 5th canto. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimade Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarini Vancha Kalpataro Bhayascha Kripa Sindhubhi Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this chapter is an answer to Parikshit Maharaj's request to Sukadeva Goswami in chapter 4, asking him to describe all the various incarnations of the Lord. So there is a description of how creation is made by Garbhodaka Sai Vishnu, Kshirodaka Sai Vishnu, Karanodaka Sai Vishnu, and then Lord Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu. And then in this chapter we are dealing with various incarnations of the Lord meant for specific functions. And it leads all the way up to description of Kalki in verse 38, who is yet to incarnate in Kali Yuga. So there's a list of all scheduled incarnations with specific functions. And this Sukadeva Goswami is repeating to Parikshit Maharaj as he heard from Brahma, the creator himself, as he was describing it to Narada. And Lord Brahma continues that the pastimes of the Lord are unlimited. You know, it's not that I have said 38 verses and these are all the incarnations and then that's it. No, he says that they are all unlimited, and even Ananta, who has thousands of mouths, thousands of faces, he cannot complete dictating these pastimes of the Lord. And so how do we understand these pastimes of the Lord? Brahma says it is possible only by the mercy of the Lord's pure devotees. And he says even very fallen people in the category are women, Shudras, people who do not know the science of God, animals, beasts, you know, even they can get an understanding of the Lord if they get the blessings of the pure devotees, and gives a list of many pure devotees, starting with Prahlad Maharaj, Bali Maharaj, long list of pure devotees. And he says by their blessings it is possible to realize the unlimited pastimes of the Lord. So he says, starting from this verse, we hear what are the effects of such blessings of pure devotees. So the effect of getting blessings of such pure devotee is that they get the realization of the absolute Brahman, which is full of unlimited bliss without grief. Yeah, so that is the preliminary benefit, beginning, scratching the surface benefit, that we will experience unlimited bliss without any grief, and which is transcendental, because only transcendentally it is possible to experience unlimited bliss. Nectar of Devotion describes three types of bliss. One bliss is material happiness. Another bliss is happiness from liberation. And the third type of bliss is the bliss of performing devotional service. Three types of bliss. And the happiness in material world is simply the cessation of material distress. That is all is happiness. Continuously we are thrown left and right, so much of suffering is there, and momentarily that suffering may stop. And then we think that we are happy. And that is all is happiness that we can get in material world. There is this beautiful illustration of a man hanging from a tree. And there is an elephant shaking the tree. And if he falls down, there are snakes which are ready to fang him. And the branch where he is hanging, the root of that branch is eaten by two rats, a white rat and a black rat. They're slowly eating and making the branch thinner and thinner. So any moment the branch is going to break and fall. And then on the branch is a beehive, and loads of bees are all swarming around him and stinging him. And he is hanging there. In this situation, a drop of honey falls from the beehive. And then it touches his tongue, and he thinks, wow, what happiness. So that is the happiness people experience in this material world. The elephant is our past karma. The snakes are all the results that we are going to experience, the reactions of our present karma. And the branch is our present state of life, which is being eaten up by the two rats, black and white rat or day and night. Day and night are gnawing away our life. And the beehive and the bee are Maya, and continuously they sting. And then what we get? One drop of honey, a small pause in material suffering. Or you may get something like a siddhi, some kind of siddhi. Oh, now I can fly in air. So what? Some kind of siddhi, and you think, whoa, this is so nice. So that is material happiness. And this material happiness is not just insignificant. You can literally say it is inexistent when you compare it to Brahma Saukyam Anantam. Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, in the fifth canto, it will be clearly explained. It's fifth canto, fifth chapter. Rishabhadev is explaining to his 100 sons. Nayam deho deha bhajam driloke kashtan kamam arhate vidbujame tapo divyam putraka yena sattvam śuddhyed yasmad brahma saukyam tvanantam. So Rishabhadev told his sons, my dear boys, of all the living entities who have accepted material bodies in this world, one who has been awarded this human form should not work hard day and night simply for sense gratification, which is available for dogs and hogs that eat stool. One should engage in penance and austerity to attain the divine position of devotional service. By such activity, one's heart is purified, and when one attains this position, he attains eternal, blissful life, which is transcendental to material happiness and which continues forever. Brahma Saukyam Tvanantam. So, Brahma Saukyam is liberation from this material existence, where we don't suffer any more repeated birth, death, old age or disease. This fear of material, repetition of material cycle is stopped when one realizes Brahman. And it is pratibodha-mātraṁ. It is the opposite of material existence. So material existence is temporary, spiritual existence is permanent. Material existence, you suffer old age, disease. In spiritual existence, you don't have that old age, disease and all those things. You don't take birth, you don't die, you live eternally. So whatever you experience there is also going to be eternal, and what you experience there is opposite of what you experience here. Here we experience unlimited suffering, there we'll experience unlimited bliss. And that is only the beginning of spiritual life. If we advance further in spiritual life, then we will know a higher aspect of the Supreme Lord, which is the Paramatma aspect. And in this aspect, we can establish, Srila Prabhupada says, the supreme conception of affection is realized. The Supreme Lord is the supreme soul of everything, and therefore, in the supreme conception of affection is realized. So, a relationship. When we understand what Paramatma is doing for us, then we feel highly obliged. I'm going to hell, I'm going to heaven, I'm going into the body of a hog, I'm going into the body of a bacteria, I'm going to be a deva, I'm going to suffer in hell with some hellish body. Wherever I may go in this material existence, Paramatma will never abandon me. He will never say, oh, you are going to be in body of a hog. I am the Supreme Lord. Hogs, but pigs are very dirty. I am not going to be Paramatma in this form. You know? He never abandons. Just like an affectionate father never gives up his love for his children, even if they are nonsensical. You know, he always has that hope that my son is going to come back to me. So in the same way, Paramatma is always accompanying you and always giving you guidance and just waiting. When are you going to listen to what I am saying? When are you going to turn your face towards me? So in that level, we establish a relationship, and that relationship makes us experience affection, and that is spiritual affection. It is not bound by the affections that we see experienced in material world. The affections experienced in material world are very conditional. If you don't do what I want you to do, I will not give you my property. Yeah, many parents do that. No, I won't give you my property. If you go to, if you follow something which is not accepted by me, like a religion, you change to become a Hare Krishna or whatever, I'll disown you. You know, so this is the nature of material affection. So then the opposite is realized in the spiritual world. The opposite is spiritual affection, which we can realize in the Paramatma stage. So in the Brahman stage, we realize cessation of material suffering, and the opposite is eternal bliss. Eternal suffering, opposite eternal bliss. Come up a little higher is relationships. Very limited in the relationships are very limited, subjected to terms and conditions, and in spiritual world it's unlimited and unconditional. And then that is still not the highest. The highest is Bhagavan realization. Srila Prabhupada says the relationship between the soul and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, both of them having spiritual senses. The spirit soul with his spiritual senses serves the Supreme Lord, who has spiritual senses also. And the amount of bliss we experience there is unlimited, and the relationship is very personal. Each and every living entity has a unique and individual relationship with the Supreme Lord. And in Bhagavan realization, that unique relationship is revealed. And the living entity can serve the Lord as per that unique relationship. Some of us are in Shantarasa, some of us are in Dasi rasa, some of us are in Sakhya or Vatsalya or Madhurya rasa. Something unique we will have with Krishna, and based on that unique relationship, we will be serving the Lord. And our senses are engaged in serving the senses of the Lord, and that will give happiness that is in Nectar of Devotion. Rupa Goswami explains that it is trillion-folded times more. Compared to material happiness, Brahma Saukhyam is material happiness is drop, Brahma Saukhyam is like ocean. Material happiness is inexistent, Brahma Saukhyam is anantam. It is eternally existing. And that Brahma Saukhyam Tvanantam is like the water in the calf's footprint, hoof print, compared to the bliss experience when one performs pure devotional service. So gradually in each level, the bliss is increasing. So as we increase our realization of God, the amount of bliss we experience is also increased. In Nectar of Devotion, 3 levels of bliss are explained even inside devotional service. So first is material happiness, then happiness due to liberation, and then happiness due to spiritual devotional, pure devotional service. And in pure devotional service, Nectar of Devotion explains 3 levels are there. 3 levels are there. And when we are doing Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, When we are doing Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, we experience happiness. Kleshagni and Shubhada. Kleshagni means all ceasing of all material miseries. And Shubhada means all auspiciousness. Even in the sadhana bhakti level, we will experience this. Yeah, Kleshagni and Shubhada. And moksha lagudha is experienced. Then there are 6 characteristics of pure devotional service. And this moksha lagudha means we deride. When you say, wow, this is like a ever-existing bliss. But a person who is in the stage of bhava, that person derides it. Ha, I don't care for this. This is nothing. Because he is experienced something higher. So in Vaidhi level, you experience Kleshagni and Subhada. And in Bhava level of Bhakti, you experience Moksha Lagudha and Sudurlabha. Sudurlabha means that this happiness is very rare to obtain because it is bestowed on us. It is not something we can strive and achieve. It is bestowed on us by the mercy of pure devotees. So from sadhana, from Vaidhi sadhana, when we progress and reach the level of Bhava Bhakti, in Bhava Bhakti we experience a bliss which makes us deride moksha. This verse is talking about liberation and the bliss that we attain by that, but this can become insignificant. And when we reach prema, pure devotional service in prema, then there are two more characteristics. That is Sandrananda Visheshatma, that is condensed bliss, condensed form of bliss. It is like sugarcane juice. You know, when you drink sugarcane juice, it still has some elements of water. Then what they do, they put it and they boil it. And then they give you syrup, which is thicker. Sugarcane syrup is much thicker. Means it's the sweetness is much more. You know, and even if it's hot, you want to drink and feel like that's nice. You know, and so much sweetness is there. But if you still keep boiling it, it becomes like gur. No, nothing, no water, solid bliss. Yeah. So that solid bliss is Sandrananda, the bliss experienced by devotees who are in Prema Bhakti. And that kind of bliss is attracting even Krishna. That's the 6th characteristic. Sri Krishna Akarshani Sacha. You know, so they will get the attention. Krishna is Madan Mohana. You know, Madana. Cupid, he's attracting the conditioned living beings, but he is attracted to Krishna. Krishna is Madan Mohan. And Radharani is Madan Mohana Mohini. Yeah, she attracts even Krishna. In Prema Bhakti, the characteristic is that even Krishna becomes attracted to the devotees. Krishna means all attractive. But when you reach pure devotional service in the Prema level, then you become object of Krishna's attention. Now, so the bliss experienced on the Brahman level is something that devotees will think as insignificant, something that they will think as has no value. It is trillions of time. The bliss experienced in Prema level is trillions of time more intense than the bliss experienced in Brahman realization. And that Brahman realization is infinite bliss compared to the bliss experienced in the material world. So there is a gradual progress. So when we take shelter of pure devotees, they give us as a preliminary initial benefit. This is the first thing they are talking about. Yeah? Preliminary initial benefit is that unlimited bliss we can experience by getting relief from the grief of material existence, birth, death, old age and disease. So that is the that is the essence of this verse. And just to summarize, after talking about the various incarnations, scheduled incarnations meant for performing different functions, Brahma says that only by the pastimes of Lord are unlimited. They're not limited to these 38 verses. They're unlimited. And you can understand the unlimited pastimes of the Lord only by the blessings of pure devotees. And he gives a long list of pure devotees, and he says they all know about the Supreme Lord perfectly. And when you surrender to them, they can give you the knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And when you get the blessings of the pure devotee, the first initial benefit is that you will be freed from the grief of material existence, and you will experience Brahma-saukhyam anantam. Yeah? And Srila Prabhupada in the purport goes to explain this Brahma-saukhyam anantam is the beginning of spiritual existence. Beyond that is paramatma level, where you experience a relationship of unconditional love with the Supreme Lord. And beyond that is the Bhagavan realization, where we have spiritual senses which we utilize in the service of the Lord who has spiritual senses. And we experience very condensed, very intense form of love. Nectar of Devotion explains this form of love as Sandrananda, condensed bliss. And this bliss is trillion times more than Brahma Saukhyam Tvanantam, which is infinite compared to the material happiness we get. So, by the mercy of pure devotees, we get the opportunity to experience, by their blessing, we will, by serving them, we will get the opportunity to experience that prema bhakti, the condensed form of bliss, which is explained in Nectar of Devotion. And that bliss attracts Krishna himself. That kind of devotees who experience such form of bliss, they are attracting the attention of Lord Krishna. And then he goes on his chariot all the way to meet them. He leaves his all royal opulences and sits and takes a chariot ride from Kurukshetra to Vrindavan, attracted by the purity of these devotees who are in prema level. Thank you. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Any questions or comments? Hare Krishna. Mataji is asked first.
Thank you, Mataji. Such a nice class. As you were speaking, I was thinking about the destination of those who meditate on the impersonal form of the Lord. We know that Brahma Jyoti. And I have not read this, so that's why I'm asking this question. We know the bhaktas go back to Krishna's abode, but where do those who meditate on the Paramatma feature of the Lord, what is their destination? If you can kindly explain.
I've heard this in my Bhakti Shastri class. So there is Brahmavadis who meditate on the impersonal feature and they merge into Brahman. They're different from Mayavadis. Mayavadis are envious. They go to hell. Brahmavadis who meditate on the impersonal Brahman, they merge into Brahman. And Paramatma, people who are jnanis, they take up the process of meditation on Paramatma. And at some point, they will be able to see themselves as soul and Paramatma. They will be able, they will have, they also have Brahman realization. In that context, Brahman is the soul. I am soul, I am not the body. So they will see the soul themselves and they will see Paramatma. Then two things can happen. when you have that Paramatma realization, Paramatma is ready to give you boons like siddhis, Ashta Siddhi and all that. So if you are not, which are all material. So if you are not pure in your aim, you will become content with those, and you will get all those siddhis and you'll think, oh, I've got something. But if you are very pure in your worship, then there is a relationship established. And then you will go into a higher level of understanding, where once the relationship is established and you start doing service, at that moment, Paramatma realization is over and you start, service means Bhagavan, You cannot do service to Paramatma. So when you want something more, then you are led to the Bhagavan realization. Then they become devotees. So the two choices will be given, and depending on what they pick up, either they will just be stuck in this material world with some siddhi, drops of honey, or they will go higher in this is, I heard in my Bhakti Shastri class. I hope it's okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you much. This.
Hare Krishna. So Mataji, you took us from material happiness to Brahma-sokhyam to condensed love. Now I wanted to know more about this condensed love. What exactly is condensed love?
When Krishna had headache, then he told Narada, my headache will go away only when my devotees give me the dust of their lotus feet. So Narada went around asking different devotees, will you please give me the dust of your lotus feet? And many of them were saying, oh, if we give to make it short, people were not willing to give, fear that they will go to hell, understanding that Krishna is Supreme Lord. So I cannot, actually it's not possible that he has headache, it is not, their understanding of him being Lord, But when he reached and requested the gopis, they all dug, they all spread out a chadar and, let's stomp away ladies, and they collected, all the dust, and they collected and said, you want more, please come back. Yeah, but Krishna is Supreme Lord. If you put your dust on his head, that means you're all going to go to hell. It's okay, we know, no problem. As long as Krishna is happy, So that kind of love is called prema. And they get joy not by becoming some jnani or yogi or anything. They get their joy simply by serving Krishna. And that class of people experience a happiness which is condensed form, They may even go to hell, but the happiness they experience comes from serving Krishna. And that kind of people are the ones who attract Krishna. We will, Mataji was next, if we could, thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. As I'm trying to understand about the scheduled incarnations, that it means that it is already known that so and so incarnation will come. So it also means that degradation will happen in every cycle. So degradation of how the generations are getting degraded, and ultimately Kalki will come and then everything will be finished. So I'm trying to understand how to place compassion when I know already that such degradation is anyway going to happen.
How to?
Right now my compassion is not placed properly, so now I know that, because I know that their degradation will happen anyway. So
compassion for other living entities.
Yes.
Yeah, the ultimate compassion is giving everyone Krishna consciousness. That means books. Topmost compassion. Of course, when I see people, I'm like, I can't speak. But I do understand that giving out Srila Prabhupada's books and connecting people to Srila Prabhupada is the ultimate form of compassion. And Srila Prabhupada's books are like time bombs. Even when people buy his books and don't read and they just keep in their house, somebody else is going to take and somebody else is going to benefit. My husband very, very fondly remembers that one of his relatives who was studying in Rome got a book from ISKCON devotees there who were on Harinam. That person never read that book, and they brought that book and left it in their house. And when my husband visited their house, he was waiting for them to come, so he was sitting on the sofa and he saw the book. He picked up that book and he just saw Prabhupada's picture in the cover, and that changed everything for him, you know. So ultimate compassion is connecting all living souls to Srila Prabhupada. Because Srila Prabhupada will connect us to Krishna, you know. So that is my understanding with it.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
And then there's Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you for the nice class. Just a small addition. There are those type of jnanis, after realizing Paramatma, they are thinking that this Paramatma is a product of Brahman. Those jnanis, they go and merge in Brahman. So there are also those type of jnanis.
Thank you, Prabhu. It's 9 o'clock, so officially we will end the class here. Anyone else wants to stay behind, you're welcome to.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Hare Krishna. Prabhu.
So we'll postpone the question next class.
Okay.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.